And welcome to today's webinar, Shiba Strong Grants for Profit Businesses, presented by Brad McConnell from Allies for Community Business. We want you to know this webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the blue widget or the CC in the box located on the bottom left of the screen. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/ChicagoBACP. We encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Turning the webinar over to Brad.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. We're going to speak today about the Shiba Strong Grants for-profit businesses, in which we'll talk about businesses in any industry, and then very specifically, some specific guidelines for restaurants who are seeking to do outdoor dining. The nonprofits discussion, that webinar will take place at 4 o'clock today, and the criteria and structure is a little bit different for that. So if you are a nonprofit, I encourage you to join us at 4 rather than here at 1. So the agenda is we're going to run through the funding, eligibility, priority, application, and assistance. I'm going to just really briefly describe who we are as an organization in 30 seconds or less. Allies for Community Business is the partner of the city. In this particular program, we're serving as the program administrator here. Our vision is that entrepreneurs from any background can start and grow great businesses in their communities. We provide the capital and the coaching and the collaboration that entrepreneurs need to do what they're seeking to do. So let's talk first about the funding. $22 million at least in this program, possibly more depending on whether additional funding sources are available. Again, there will be a split here between nonprofit and for-profit businesses. There'll be at least $2 million available specifically for restaurants. The amount that a grant winner will receive through Shiba Strong is that if your revenue was less than $60,000 in 2020, then the size of your grant, if you're eligible and selected, will be $5,000. If your revenue was greater than $60,000 in 2020, then the grant amount will be $10,000. The maximum revenue for the program is $3 million for 2020, and we'll get back to that eligibility criteria in just a second. But just know that the grants are either going to be $5,000 or $10,000 for all winners. So how can the funds be used? Good news here is that the funds are really flexible relative to some of the other programs you might have been aware of and applied for. So in this particular case, funds can be spent on operations, on staff, overhead, inventory, all of the basic costs which you would typically have. If you're specifically applying for that $2 million additional pot for outdoor dining recipients, the funds there must be spent on the purchase of outdoor furniture or COVID-related signage or PPE. Really important here, and this is, I think, consistent with what you've seen in other programs. If you are receiving a grant, you need to attest to the fact you're going to be using these dollars to cover some cost or loss in revenue that you haven't already covered through a previous government grant. And that's a function of the federal guidelines that we're following, because these are federal funds that we're passing through. So given the flexibility of the use of the funding, I don't think that'll be a problem, but just know that that will be an attestation that you'll have to make as part of being a recipient of this grant. So who's eligible? You're eligible if you're a Chicago business, and therefore your business address is within the city limits, and you earn less than $3 million in revenue in 2020. You can be a chain as long as the overall amount that you have underneath the businesses that you own is less than $3 million and you are headquartered here. And if you're a franchise operator, you have two or one locations. As long as overall your revenue is less than $3 million, then you're gonna be eligible too. So there's a list that is, I think, generally the standard list of businesses that are not eligible. So no need to study this particular list, because this entire list is also on the Shiba Strong landing page for this program, which we'll come back to. But I think the normal exceptions for grant programs that the city puts in place are also applicable here. Okay, so what is the city intending to prioritize here with this particular round of grants underneath the Shiba Strong banner? So anybody is eligible on these two items here, but I just want to talk about priority for those we'll seek to fund first. If you attest to the fact that you've not received federal, state, local government aid or financial relief yet, we do want to prioritize those business owners so we can make sure that we're trying to be as equitable as possible across those many, many, many businesses who've tried to secure financing in previous grants and have been unable to. We're also going to have at least 50% of the funds be dedicated to businesses that are operating in low to moderate income communities. And there's a definition specific to that that is on the list, on the landing page. Know that it's not just low to moderate income communities, because as much as 49%, 50% will be included also there and in other places. So what do the grant applicants have to provide? They need to provide business owner background information, information about your business, information about business operations, and then say yes to a series of attestations. So it's a relatively short application where we're just asking for the minimum that we need in order to make sure that we can evaluate your application fully and correctly. The documents that you'll need to upload are the following. You need to see a valid ID, and there's lots of different options for that. Need to show us your business license or some other proof of Chicago address if you happen to be operating in a business line that doesn't require either a city or a state license. You absolutely do need to provide a city license if you're applying for the outdoor dining grants, because we know that all of those businesses are licensed by the city of Chicago. And then we're going to use your 2020 federal tax return. So just provide all pages with whatever you filed. And many of you will have filed an 1120 or 1065. Some will have filed a 1040 personal, and in that case, add your Schedule C, because we need to see all of those pages for whatever it is that you use for your filing. And then separately for the nonprofits, there's the 990. So whatever you filed in 2020, share that with us, please. And then just your most recent business bank statement, so that we can confirm that the business is located in the city of Chicago, and we later can match the bank account to which we're going to be depositing the funds with the business bank statement that you uploaded at the time of application. So those are the documents that we're going to ask you to upload at the time of application. Now, if you need any help at all, Allies for Community Business is here to help you. There are two different help desk forms. One is in English and one is in Spanish. Again, you can access the application in English or Spanish and the help desk form in English or Spanish from the Shy Biz Strong landing page. And we're going to put that direct link into the chat so that you can just click on that and you know exactly where you need to go in order to get started. But just know that if you want the short version of the link to the help desk forms, those are the two sort of weirdly formatted, but you're familiar with these by now probably, web addresses to use if you're going to go to the help forms directly. Beyond all that, you know that anything you're interested in that we can help with at Allies for Community Business, you can find us at all the places you see on your screen. a4cb.org is the place to start. And then we have pages specifically for our grants and for our loans and for our free coaching. And you can see the socials there. So that was our very quick run through of the basics here for this application. It's relatively simple compared to lots and lots of other applications that you've seen for either grants or emergency loans in the past throughout the pandemic. And that's by design, because we want to get the money out the door as quickly as possible. So let me close on that, and we're going to go to your questions. Our intention is to have the application open until November 12th. We're then going to very quickly evaluate the applications that we've received by the deadline. We'll do those in priority order and then lottery order after that. We will seek to provide all the funds before Christmas. So very fast turnaround on this program when we get all the dollars out as quickly as possible, because we know the business owners who we're trying to serve here need them in order to continue to do what you're trying to do and creating wealth and jobs in your communities. So with that, I'm going to stop and we're going to turn to your questions.
Okay, great, Brad. A few came in. Is this for restaurants only, or is this for the construction companies too?
This is for anybody who is interested in participating in the program. Doesn't make any difference what industry you're in, so long as you're not one of those prohibitive industries that we listed before. The outdoor dining portion is an additional $2 million on top of the pot that's available for all for-profits. And as I mentioned, those specific restaurant criteria are a little bit more stringent on how those funds can be used, but all industries aside from that ineligible list are eligible for the overall for-profit grant.
Great. Does prior assistance include PPP or just EIDL funds?
If you received a forgiveness for PPP, meaning it turned into a grant, or an EIDL advance, which is a grant, those two would count not to disqualify you, but just to make it such that other people who didn't receive free money would be slightly higher prioritized than you. If all you received was a loan through PPP and it wasn't forgiven, or all you received was an EIDL loan without having an advance, that's irrelevant for the purposes of this program. You'll be treated as a priority applicant since you hadn't received any free money yet.
Great. Does the primary business owner need to live in Chicago?
So two things. One, need to make sure that the business is located in Chicago. That was clear. The business owner who provides us with the ID that we're using, we're looking for business owners who are City of Chicago residents. If there's a particular weird case that we need to know about, you can tell us about that through the help desk, in which, let's say that your primary residence is in Chicago, but your ID is outside because you haven't gotten it updated. We have a number of situations like that because the DMVs have been very tough to access and driver's licenses have been extended. But generally, we're looking to fund grants to both businesses and business owners who are within the City of Chicago. If there's some extenuating circumstance about that, then please just let us know through the help desk.
Great. If you received an SBA loan, not a grant, is that considered government assistance, even though it was not a grant?
For the purposes of you identifying whether you have received assistance and us identifying, therefore, whether you should be, quote, priority applicant or not, simply because you receive an SBA loan, that does not in any way disadvantage you because that's not free money. You have to repay that money. So the short answer is no, but I do want to be clear that if you have dollars that have been forgiven and turned into a grant from the federal government, from whatever program, then you would want to just mark that you have received that kind of assistance through the emergency programs over the last 18 months. Again, you're still eligible, it's just to be slightly lower priority.
Okay, great. What is a calculation based on?
So I believe the calculation you're referencing here would be the amount of the grant to which somebody is going to be eligible. So what we're looking to do here is just say that, and this is all, again, if you're eligible, because $3 million and less in revenue in 2020, that's the window here. If you earn more than $3 million in revenue, according to your 2020 tax returns, then you're not eligible for the program. But if you are underneath $3 million in revenue, then what we're seeking to do is just have a flat amount. It's either $10,000 or $5,000 to which you're eligible. If you earned on your tax return revenues of greater than $60,000 in 2020, according to your tax returns, then you're eligible for a $10,000 grant. And if you're beneath $60,000 a year in revenues, then you're eligible for a $5,000 grant. And essentially all we're doing there is saying that under the theory that we want to provide at least a month of coverage, if you had 60,000 divided by 12, $5,000 or less than that per month in revenue, then we wouldn't give you a grant that'd be more than what you earned in the month altogether. So that's why that threshold is $60,000. But all you need to know is that if you're above $60,000 in revenue in 2020, you're eligible for $10,000. If beneath $60,000 in revenue, you're eligible for $5,000.
Great. What is the Refer Entrepreneur service?
So within Allies for Community Business and all the things that we do, we're always seeking to find new people to help. And that's inclusive of people who are looking for a grant. So we always encourage on webinars like this for all of you, just get the word out to your friends who are also business owners who might be eligible. And so anytime somebody refers an entrepreneur to Allies for Community Business, we always immediately then make sure that that entrepreneur knows about all of the opportunities that are currently available to them, inclusive of the emergency grants and the loans and the free coaching and everything else that we know about that either we or our partners can provide. So that's what that's about.
Great. Do nonprofit organizations have to have a physical office?
No, and there's a lot more nuance to that, which we're going to get into at the 4 o'clock webinar. I'll hold that until 4 o'clock. There's a lot going on in that particular answer, but the short answer is no.
Okay, great. What if you got a PP1 and a PP2 and both were forgiven?
Then you're still eligible for this grant. You would not be in the what we'll call the prioritized bucket because you have received grant-based assistance from the government before. But again, you're still eligible to apply and receive a grant here.
Is the calculation based on revenue or net profit decline?
The calculation is either 10,000 or 5,000. So there's no sort of calculation of the size of the grant amount as you've seen in many, many other programs for the purposes of figuring out whether you're eligible for either $10,000 or $5,000. And that's the only calculation that we're talking about here. It's either or. We're looking at your revenues, not your net.
Right. Regarding eligible costs, if we already spent a bunch of money on outside furniture, will that be covered, or is the grant just meant to cover new purchases?
No, the grant can absolutely cover previous purchases so long as you've not received some other grant that already covered the exact same purchases.
Our accountant is so backed up and has not finished our 2020 tax returns. Is there a temporary workaround on this aspect?
There isn't. We need to have 2020 tax returns in order to have a substantiation of your revenue size. And we figured since it's so late in the year that nearly all businesses have been able to file appropriately. So just encourage you to work with your accountant or whoever you need to in order to make sure that you have those filings in place by November 12th, so that then you can provide us with the full all pages tax return.
Great. For my tax return, I have a Schedule C only. Is that okay?
Send us all pages that you filed with the federal government. And so the Schedule C will be a portion of the overall return, and just send us every page that you filed.
What about restaurant restoration grant, which was based on the decline in revenue?
I'm going to guess that question is about whether or not that should be treated as a grant for the purposes of deciding whether you'd be a priority for the program or not. If that's true, and I've interpreted that correctly, then you're eligible for this grant. You wouldn't be in the priority bucket because you already received a grant from the federal, state, or local governments. But again, you're absolutely eligible, and so we encourage you to apply.
Great. Do you ask the amount of the PPP or the EIDL for determining priority? For
No.
example, denied then receive 1,000 EIDL.
No, whether or not you received $1 million or $1, we're really trying to do here in just the prioritization process is just say there's been a lot of businesses who've tried very hard and haven't gotten a penny from anybody, federal, state, local, or whatever. And so we want to help those folks first in order to have some assistance be going to as many businesses as possible. But we do expect that there'll be some number of businesses who have received some funding elsewhere and who will still be able to receive funding here, because we think, although we don't know for sure until we have all the applications, there'll be sufficient funds in order to do that, sufficient funds in order to fund applications that go beyond the initial priority buckets.
Great. I have two different EINs. Should I apply for the grant with both? So two separate applications?
Good question. So with a single business owner, if you have two different EINs, we're welcome to apply under each of those EINs. You will be asked to attest that the combined amount of your businesses does not exceed $3 million in revenue in 2020. So long as that's true, then you can apply twice, one under either of the EINs.
Great. Our 2020 business revenue shows that we earned revenue, but by the end of the year, due to COVID, we actually only showed a loss. How do we reflect that to you?
That's no problem. We just show essentially a negative number in the revenue side. So again, it's we'll be looking at the whole of the tax return, all pages. For that question as to whether you're eligible for $10,000 or $5,000, we're going to be using the top line revenue number, not the net income or loss number kind of at the bottom of the schedule. So in any case, just provide us with your returns and then make sure that when we just prompt you for a single number on the application form, you use your revenue rather than your net income number to populate that field.
Great. Does a business need a DBA or listed as a business on a Schedule C?
No, if you just have a legal business name or you're operating as your own person, as your sort of de facto legal business name. You'll note that in the application form for this grant, the DBA field is optional. And so if you have one, use it, populate that field. And if you don't have one, just leave it blank.
Do applicants to the Sidewalk Cafe program need to have an active Sidewalk Cafe permit? Or
No.
can they be in the process of applying for one? May have not applied previously due to prohibitive cost of furniture.
Yeah, if you have your business license, that's all that we need for the purposes of this grant. Whether or not you have an additional sidewalk permit's irrelevant for the purposes of being eligible for this grant.
Great. Are home daycares eligible if they receive a CCRG grant?
You're eligible. You'll be in that kind of, so there's a priority bucket for those who have received grants. So sorry, there's a priority bucket for those who have not received any emergency grants, but there's plenty of businesses, we think, that will still be eligible and receive grants who did already receive something. It just so happens they'll be lower on the priority list here. So you absolutely can apply. Different question as to whether it's a daycare that runs as a for-profit or a nonprofit. That will then determine which of the two applications you should be filling out. But again, that's a separate question. Both of those applications are available on the same landing page, ShyBiz Strong.
We provide services in many zip code areas. Should we attempt to list them all?
Good question. I would suggest that you just list the zip code in which you provide the most services, or the zip code that has the highest amount of services, even if it's not a majority of your services, if you're really distributed around. Because what we're really trying to do here is get to appropriate distribution of the grants across the city's zip codes. And so the best way to think about that then will be that wherever your services are greatest, that'd be the place we would want to, I think, count your services.
Great. I own a salon that was hard hit due to the pandemic. I pivoted and reconstructed my business into a tax franchise that now specializes in working with salon owners. Learning on my accounting degree background. Will this be an issue? My business is now essential and specializes in the target market that was hard hit by the pandemic.
I think the primary question here is the business still operating under the same EIN? And is the business therefore a business that has been in continuous operation since 2020? And therefore, can you share with us your 2020 tax filing? If so, shifting between two different types of business line is totally fine. If you completely close the original business and then you created a brand new business that only started in 2021, you almost by definition won't have 2020 taxes to file and therefore share with us. In that circumstance, you'd be ineligible. But in the previous circumstance in which you just changed what you're doing, but the EIN is still the same and the tax filings are still for 2020 available, then that you should absolutely apply, because that's no problem.
Great. Is it based on gross or net business income?
If the it here is the question as to whether you're eligible for a $10,000 or $5,000 grant, the number we're using is gross, not net income.
Does the application form list different loans and grants so the business owner can specify which are grants, which are loans? Also, if the business got a GoFundMe donation.
So in this application form, the only purpose that this form will be used for is the ShyBiz Strong for-profit business grant. Now, there are two portions, as I mentioned, of this grant. One is just generally for all industries that are eligible. And then the other is that additional $2 million that's specifically focused on outdoor dining for just restaurants. But that's the only thing that this application will have anything to do with. And therefore, when you're using this application, you're just applying for this grant.
Okay, thanks. I'm an independent contractor, self-employer for Uber. Which application should I apply? ShyBiz Strong for-profit business and outdoor dining, or nonprofit application?
Unless you have registered yourself as a nonprofit, which means you've registered with the Secretary of State as a nonprofit, you filed your taxes at 990, all of which is highly unlikely in that scenario. I think it's almost certainly true that you'd be wanting to fill out the for-profit / outdoor dining application here, because as an Uber driver, it's almost certainly true that you're operating in order to generate a profit for you and your family. So for-profit is almost certainly the case, what you want.
What if you applied for B2B grant, but have not yet received the funds?
So in that case, again, you're absolutely eligible here. You will also be a part of the priority group, provided you haven't received any other grant elsewhere, federal, state, or local. So merely having applied for a back to business grant will have no bearing on your ability to secure a grant here.
If your business is located in the suburbs of Chicago, do you not qualify?
This is only because of City of Chicago specific funding through the City of Chicago budget. This is only for businesses that are located within the City of Chicago for City of Chicago residents.
Please confirm that the primary business owner needs to live in Chicago to be eligible. Example, businesses downtown, both owners live in the suburbs.
Yeah, so the idea here is that the grant will be to City of Chicago residents who are running City of Chicago businesses. So if you are not a City of Chicago resident, we'd be funding other business owners instead.
I do not know if I missed this information. Do we need to be open in 2019 to be eligible for this grant?
No, you need to have been open in 2020 though, because we need you to have filed 2020 taxes for your business. Being open in 2019 is irrelevant in this particular program, which is different than in a lot of other programs.
Great. My business doesn't require a business license, but I do have my LLC. Will my articles of incorporation, my organization suffice?
Yes. So there are some types of businesses in the state of Illinois and in the city of Chicago that don't require a business license from either of those two entities. And if you're in one of those lines of business, then yes, if you just provide us with your articles of incorporation, that's sufficient. And just make sure that you're, actually, I was going to say, make sure that you're clear with us that you didn't need a license, but you don't have to do that. We'll see that from the industry that you select.
Can a startup company with a revenue of less than 10,000 and with no grants approved before apply for this grant?
As long as you started up in 2020 and you filed taxes in 2020 for that business, even if you filed as an individual with a Schedule C, you are eligible. If you didn't start the business until 2021, and therefore you don't have any 2020 taxes for us to use for sizing or eligibility review, then you would not be eligible.
What if I haven't received any grants, but I'm still waiting to hear about my B2B application? Would I still be in the no grants priority group?
Yes.
We are still waiting to hear about the B2B grant for one of our clients. When she applies for this, she would say she hasn't received a grant yet. But what if she gets the B2B in the meantime?
Yeah, I think what we're looking for is you for you to answer truthfully at the time you apply. There's just no way to know or even predict whether or not you're going to get a grant from some other source, whether it be from state of Illinois or who knows where else, because obviously there's a lot of organizations who are trying their best to provide funding to small businesses. So at the time you apply, just mark whether or not you've received a grant as of that date. And then what happens after that is not going to be relevant for the purpose of us evaluating your grant application here.
Great. Is it only the 2020 return or will the 2019 return also be requested?
Only 2020.
We file taxes under EIN of a holding company. Should our application match the holding company EIN or the EIN of the main company that generates revenue?
If you file taxes under the holding company, then the EIN and the taxes should both be at the holding company level. And we will look at the revenue of the holding company where the EIN has been, upon which the EIN has been filed, in order to determine whether you're beneath $3 million for eligibility and whether or not you're above $60,000 in revenue for the $10,000 grant versus the $5,000 grant.
Great. Can people in the process of applying for food service license apply early? Or there be a second round?
There's only going to be a single round, as far as I know. I suppose it's always possible there'll be another round in 2022. But for the purposes of this discussion, let's assume that there's only a single round. So long as you've already been operating your business and you have your tax returns in 2020 to substantiate that, whether or not you have additional licenses, again, is a different matter and not relevant here. You need to have your City of Chicago license that you can share with us if you're operating in a business line, which requires a City of Chicago license. So that's a little different. But for example, if you have your City of Chicago license, but you didn't yet secure a particular type of restaurant or food safety license, which is on top of your City of Chicago license, that's okay. You do need, though, to have your City of Chicago license if you're applying for a City of Chicago grant like this.
We just moved our office to Chicago last month. Can we still apply?
I'm not sure the answer to that one. I would encourage you to apply, and obviously when we get to that application, we'll do that evaluation. In the meantime, I'll check with our friends at the city who are deciding the policy here. And the complication, of course, is as we look at the 2020 tax filings, you likely would have an address for the filings, which is not in the City of Chicago. If, though, you can prove that you have, in fact, moved into the City of Chicago by uploading a City of Chicago business license, a City of Chicago addressed business bank statement, and your ID for the business owner, which would be in the City of Chicago, then I think I'll find out whether there's a problem there. I would think that that is probably still eligible, given that you're now a Chicago business, but I'll double check that.
I think you went over this before, but if the business is located in the suburb of Chicago, are you not eligible?
Correct. This is just for City of Chicago businesses because the City of Chicago budgeted funding.
Do homesteads qualify?
It would depend on how the tax filing was constructed. So if the for-profit, so there again, two different grants, for-profit, nonprofit, both underneath the Chicago, the Shy Biz Strong headline. If a homestead was constructed as a for-profit business, which didn't violate any other ineligible business lists, including the rental income threshold and the kind of development threshold, you'll see again those specific line items on the Shy Biz Strong landing page where all those eligibility criteria are laid out in detail. Then maybe that's a really good question. It'll depend on the specifics of the business, and we will judge that based on what we see in the tax return that's uploaded.
Great. You must have a city license if registered as an LLC by the state.
If you're operating in a line of business which the city requires to be licensed by the City of Chicago, then you need to upload a City of Chicago business license. And that's regardless of what you filed at the state level. If you're operating in a business line where there is no City of Chicago business license requirement, then obviously you don't need to upload a City of Chicago business license because you won't have one, and you shouldn't. In that case, then you should upload your state licensing if you're licensed by the state of Illinois. And so I think it'll just depend on your situation with respect to what industry you're in as to which license to upload. If it's neither, and there are some, not many, but there are some lines of business where no license is required by either the state of Illinois or the City of Chicago, if that's your industry, then we'll be looking just to find the articles of corporation or the LLC registration that you suggested as what you upload in that place.
Can Uber drivers apply considering they are Schedule C?
Yes. So there's a real big distinction here. As long as you're a for-profit business who is filed as yourself and you've not filed your taxes as though your sort of taxable entity is Uber, then as a independent business owner, you're able to apply here. So it does matter how you filed, but if you filed as a business owner and one of the things or the only thing that you're doing in your business is doing that driving, then you would be eligible on that basis as long as you meet all the rest of the criteria.
Can people in the early stages of opening a food-related business that was affected by the pandemic qualify?
If you're in the opening stages, meaning you haven't generated revenue yet, and therefore you didn't generate revenue in 2020, and therefore didn't file taxes in 2020, then you would not be eligible. If in the opening stages, you did start your business in 2020, you did generate some revenue, even though it's preliminary revenue, and you did file taxes in 2020 for that business, then you are eligible.
What does in good standards with the city mean?
That means that you don't owe the city fines or fees that are overdue for whatever reason.
My business is located in the Chicago Park District and I am seasonal, so my physical business address is different from my mailing address. So everything in my mailing address, it seems to be an issue with some of the grants that I have tried for. I also have no city license. I have a Park District business license.
So in that circumstance, provided that the address of the business owner is within the city of Chicago, the requirement for providing us a license you can satisfy by just using your Chicago Park District license. The fact you're a seasonal business is irrelevant. And as long as, so that's good. And as long as you are able to then provide us with the 2020 tax returns, which has on it a Chicago business address, then you should be eligible, no problem.
Great. Can I still apply if I just opened my business in August 2021?
No, you need to have opened in 2020, have revenue in 2020, and filed taxes on that revenue in 2020.
Any upcoming assistance for people in the early stages of opening up?
Good question. So at Allies for Community Business, aside from this program, we work with startups all the time, provide free coaching, low cost lending, and are always looking out for additional grant opportunities which are available to startups. So keep a4cb.org bookmarked so you can see in our grants page and our loans page separately the types of assistance that are available to businesses who may not be eligible for this particular ShyBiz Strong grant, because we're always eager to help as many businesses as possible, regardless of where you are in your start.
Great. Is Social Security income, which is on the same 2020 Schedule C as LLC, counted as revenue for this grant?
No, because it's on a different line item, if I recall correctly. Yeah, so on the Schedule C, you would shouldn't do this from memory, but I think it's line 1, letter behind it, 1B, I want to say. I think that's where you put your business income. At any rate, the line that captures your business income, that's the line that we're going to be using for the purposes of deciding whether you're underneath the $3 million threshold and whether you're above the $60,000 threshold for deciding whether you're going to get a $10,000 grant or a $5,000 grant. Any other income that's not business related, we will see as a different line item on your Schedule C and ignore for those two purposes.
Great. I started my business in 2018, filed self-employment taxes for 2018, 2019, and 2020. In 2020, I received my LLC. Can I still apply? No grants or loans were awarded.
Provided you had some business revenue in 2020 that you use for the basis of your tax returns, and therefore we have something to size your business on, and we'll look at depending on how you filed, we'll look at the line item that's relevant for business revenue, then yes, you'll be eligible.
How will we be contacted if our application has been approved?
You'll receive an email from the program. I say the program because I'm not sure quite yet of what the sort of from address is going to be in the email, but nonetheless, you'll receive one. And what you'll receive is an invitation to come back to our site in order to sign your W-9, which is the tax document that we are obligated to provide to you, and also to authenticate the bank account that we will then disperse via automated clearinghouse, ACH, your funds, so that then we have a record of distributing the funds to you. So we'll give you all of those simple instructions by just click here, which will take you to the step that you need to take in order to claim the grant for which you've been provisionally awarded. And you should expect that if you are awarded a grant, you'll get that notification within the first 2 weeks of December.
Great. When a client filled out the application and hit submit, it stated application can't be submitted with no explanation. How do you find out why?
Interesting. That clearly shouldn't happen. So send a note to the help desk at the link that is provided on the ShyBiz Strong landing page that we were talking about a little while ago, to just say that. And I've not heard about that one before. I'll look into that on the back end to see if there's some systematic problem. We've received lots and lots and lots of applications already, so I don't think so. But I think I would encourage you to make sure you apply again if you're not quite sure. If you were able to apply, and I know that's super annoying because you don't want to fill out that form again. But I would recommend first, send it to the help desk and say, my business EIN is ... Can you please verify for me that you received my application, which I attempted to submit, but I got an error message, so I'm a little concerned that you didn't receive it. Please confirm. And then the help desk will say, you're fine, we got it. Or we don't see an application from you, our deepest apologies, because that's terrible. Can you please apply again, even though, again, that's the first time I've heard of anything like that. So I'm hopeful that you don't have to do so.
And that email is help@a4cb.org.
Yeah, so either you can send an email that way if you wish, or you'll get it faster, frankly, using the following. If you click on the link on the ShyBiz Strong landing page, which says help, you pick either English or Spanish for your help desk form. You then are prompted to tell us exactly what the issue is in a particular field, and that then is immediately picked up by our help desk and responded to. So that's what I recommend, although either one will work.
Great. If you are a restaurant, would you be eligible for both for-profit and outdoor dining?
Yes.
If your business is seasonal, example, lawn care, landscaping, do you qualify?
As long as you meet all the other criteria, yes.
What is the over total of funding available for these applications?
22 million.
What is the date range of the grant?
And on which date range you're referring to in the question, but let me guess. The application opening is between when the application opened last Friday, I want to say, and most importantly, November 12th. That's the date of closing of the application. We're going to seek to distribute all the funds for this grant before the end of the third week in December. So that's the most important window to know about. If instead the questioner was talking about the date range for eligibility purposes, the answer there is you just need to have been in business in 2020 and filed taxes on that business revenue in 2020.
We did not have any revenue in 2020. Can we still apply?
Filed taxes in 2020 and just described that you didn't have any revenue, but you're describing your expenses as well, so that therefore there's some filing, then yes. If you didn't file at all in 2020 because you didn't generate any revenue, then no.
Please restate the revenue amounts that determine if you get $5,000 or $10,000.
The threshold amount is $60,000. So if you earned in revenue in 2020 more than $60,000, according to how you filed in your taxes, then you'll be eligible for a $10,000 grant. If you filed as such, you had revenues less than $60,000 in 2020, then you'll be eligible for a $5,000 grant.
Can I still apply if I filed my taxes in 2020 under a different daycare name from the one I got my LLC in 2021?
You can. I am pondering how we would marry up what you provide us. So I encourage you to apply, certainly. How you will be evaluated is going to be dependent upon whether you're able to substantiate that the business that operated in 2020 is in fact the same business that you're operating now. And that'll depend on the business license, the bank account, the bank statement you provide. So do the best you can to make it super clear that you were in operation in 2020 and are now continuing to operate in 2021, both in the city of Chicago, of course, and make that clear based on the documents you upload, and then we'll do the best we can to sort it out.
Will the grant amount be included in our 2021 income that we will pay taxes on?
Yes. Yeah, that's always true for all grants.
Technical question. Does your site accept JPEG or TIFF files or for tax return?
Yes. Any file type will do, so long as it's a file that you're able to either drag over in the document upload window, or just pick through the kind of usual select a file and click upload. But as long as it's PDF or JPEG or PNG, like all of those extensions are fine.
My business is located in my home. I recently moved. Should I amend my LLC to change the address?
Your documentation that you have filed with the state with respect to your LLC should be up to date. So yes, absolutely.
Received my LLC in 2020, but I started my business in 2018. Do I use my social security number as a sole proprietor or my EIN number that I obtained in 2020?
Depends on how you filed your taxes in 2020. So if you filed as an individual using your social security number, you should apply for this grant as such. If you filed as a business owner using your business structure, then you should apply here using that very same business structure EIN documentation you upload.
I've tried to apply using my phone and laptop, and all I've gotten was unable to submit. Contact administrator. I've tried multiple times since the 23rd.
Okay, so that's two. That's a pattern. We haven't detected any problems until now, so really thank you for bringing this to our attention. Again, because we've received hundreds of applications and we see them sort of every hour coming through, we've not denoted any system outage or any systems issues like that, but clearly, if we at least have a few people who've had that problem, we need to investigate that in more detail. I'll give you the same answer that I gave to the previous very similar question, which is, first thing I'd suggest is just send a quick note through the help desk form with the EIN or social security number that you used in filling out that form, and say, can you confirm for me whether or not you've received an application, because I filled out the form but then got an error message at the end. That way you'll get word back from us if we've already received your application and you don't have to redo it again. If the help desk confirms we don't see anything from you using that ID that you provided, then we'll encourage you to apply again, even though I grant that's incredibly annoying to have to do that twice. So our apologies if that's in fact the case.
If on a payment plan for tickets, would I still be eligible?
Yes. Particularly so long as you owe on that plan less than $2,500. But I think you should absolutely apply, and the city will be looking at those sorts of payment plans as part of their scrub for being in good standing with the city.
Great. Once applied, how long before the approval?
Approvals will take place and funding will take place before Christmas. So by the end of the third week of December.
2 questions about grants. I received a Facebook grant. Does this disqualify me? And do loans count as grant money? As money against
both of those is no.
If awarded a grant, what date must grant funds be used by?
No time limit on these funds, which is very different than some of the other programs you may have been used to, PPP and others. We know that businesses generally are in need here, and so our expectation is that the funds will be used for one of the many, many, many eligible uses in relatively short order. But there's no explicit time by which you need to use these funds.
And that is all the questions.
I bet we cleared 100 there. You think?
Yes,
Might have.
we definitely did. Oh, Brad, just by the way, a lot of great job by you. Awesome. Thank you for being so clear in your answers. And so
Well, I'm really
detailed.
grateful for so many, grateful for so many businesses who are eager to apply and then ask really, really good questions and who are running good businesses. So I'm, delighted to do whatever I can to help. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And we'll see everyone at 4 o'clock for the nonprofit.